The police siren shattered the peaceful afternoon so violently that people stepped out onto their porches before they even knew what had happened. A luxury sedan rolled to a careful stop beneath the bright summer sun as a uniformed officer stormed toward it with anger already written across his face. Neighbors watched in disbelief while a well-dressed black man calmly stepped from the driver's seat with both hands visible, saying nothing as insults echoed across the quiet street. The officer's voice grew louder with every step until he barked the words that froze everyone within earshot. He declared that he was the law there and that nobody questioned his authority. The man remained perfectly composed, his expression showing neither fear nor anger, and after several long seconds he quietly replied that he happened to be a federal judge and that the officer had just made the biggest mistake of his career. In that instant, the entire street seemed to fall silent. If you believe kindness is stronger than hatred, truth is stronger than pride, and everyone deserves a chance to choose integrity over arrogance, please like this video, leave a thoughtful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel to become part of our growing community. The man behind the wheel was Judge Preston Hale, a respected federal judge known across several states not for seeking attention but for living a life built on discipline, compassion, and fairness. Few people recognized him outside a courtroom because he preferred a quiet existence. He spent weekends volunteering at youth legal education programs, mentoring students who dreamed of becoming attorneys, and helping struggling families understand their rights. Years earlier he had grown up in a working-class neighborhood where his mother cleaned offices and his father worked endless shifts repairing city buses. They had taught him that dignity could never be taken from someone who refused to surrender it. Those lessons stayed with him through law school, years as a civil rights attorney, and eventually his appointment to the federal bench. Despite his remarkable success, he never forgot the feeling of being underestimated. The officer was Grant Mercer, a veteran patrolman with nearly 15 years on the force. His supervisors praised his productivity, but many quietly worried about his temper. Over time he had begun believing that experience made him incapable of making mistakes. His confidence slowly transformed into arrogance. Complaints about unnecessary aggression had appeared before, yet each investigation ended without serious discipline because evidence was limited or witnesses were reluctant to come forward. Mercer convinced himself that commanding fear earned respect, and after years of hearing people obey him immediately, he stopped recognizing the difference between authority and intimidation. That afternoon Mercer claimed the sedan had briefly crossed the center line. Whether it had or not hardly mattered because within moments the traffic stop had become personal. Instead of asking routine questions, he mocked Preston's expensive suit, questioned where he could have afforded such a vehicle, and implied that someone like him must have something to hide. Preston remained calm, answering each question politely while keeping his hands visible. The more respectful Preston became, the more frustrated Mercer appeared. The crowd gathering along the sidewalk sensed that something was deeply wrong. Among those watching was retired elementary school principal Eleanor Briggs. During 4 decades in education she had spent her life teaching children to solve conflict through patience rather than anger. She recognized the dangerous imbalance unfolding before her eyes and quietly began recording with her phone. Across the street, college student Lucas Avery did the same. Neither imagined their recordings would soon become national headlines. Mercer ordered Preston out of the vehicle, searched him without explanation, and continued speaking with growing hostility. Preston never raised his voice. He simply asked why he was being treated as though he had committed a serious crime. Mercer answered by repeating that he was the law there and that nobody corrected him. Preston slowly reached into his jacket only after clearly announcing his movement and produced official federal judicial identification. The officer glanced at it briefly before dismissing it as though it meant nothing. Preston calmly explained that the identification could easily be verified. Mercer laughed loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. Within minutes another patrol unit arrived. The second officer, Natalie Brooks, immediately noticed the tension. Unlike Mercer, she approached cautiously, greeted Preston respectfully, and asked to review the identification. The moment she read the credentials, the color drained from her face. She quietly contacted dispatch for verification. Less than a minute later, confirmation came back. The man standing peacefully beside the sedan was indeed Judge Preston Hale of the United States District Court. An uncomfortable silence settled over the street. Mercer suddenly realized dozens of phones were recording. His confidence disappeared, replaced by confusion and embarrassment. Yet instead of apologizing, he attempted to justify every decision he had made. Preston simply listened without interrupting. His composure unsettled Mercer far more than anger ever could have. Word spread quickly through the department. Supervisors arrived, followed by internal affairs investigators. The witnesses willingly shared their recordings. Every insult, every unnecessary command, every dismissive remark had been preserved from multiple angles. There was no argument over what had happened because the cameras had captured everything. News organizations soon requested copies of the videos. By the next morning, millions of people had watched the encounter. Some focused on Preston's remarkable self-control. Others questioned how many ordinary citizens without cameras had experienced similar treatment. Community leaders organized peaceful meetings encouraging respectful conversations between law enforcement and residents rather than angry confrontation. Preston refused interviews filled with outrage. Instead, he repeatedly emphasized that accountability and fairness strengthened public trust far more than revenge ever could. While public attention intensified, Mercer found himself isolated. Friends stopped calling. His neighbors avoided eye contact. His teenage daughter, Claire, struggled to understand why classmates mocked her family online. At home, Mercer replayed the videos repeatedly. For the first time, he saw himself through the eyes of everyone else. He noticed the contempt in his own voice, the impatience in his expressions, and the fear visible on innocent faces nearby. The realization hurt more deeply than any suspension could. Department investigators uncovered additional complaints that suddenly carried new credibility because the recent footage revealed a consistent pattern. Officers who had remained silent for years admitted they had worried about Mercer's behavior but feared creating conflict inside the department. Honest conversations finally began. Meanwhile, Preston continued hearing cases in court exactly as he always had. He never mentioned the incident from the bench and treated every person appearing before him with equal dignity. One afternoon, he presided over the sentencing of a young man who had repeatedly stolen food while caring for younger siblings after losing both parents. Instead of choosing the harshest punishment available, Preston crafted a sentence focused on employment assistance, counseling, restitution, and community service. Months later, that young man returned to thank the court after finding steady work and rebuilding his life. Stories like these reminded people why compassion and accountability could exist together. Mercer watched one of those interviews where community members praised Preston's fairness. Something inside him finally broke. He realized that real authority had nothing to do with making people afraid. True leadership required humility, restraint, and respect even when nobody was watching. Several weeks later, Mercer requested permission to attend a public community discussion where Preston had agreed to speak about justice and public trust. The room filled with residents, officers, students, teachers, and local business owners. Everyone expected uncomfortable tension when Mercer quietly entered. Instead of sitting near the front, he chose a seat in the back, hoping simply to listen. Preston spoke about responsibility. He explained that judges, police officers, teachers, parents, and elected officials all held different forms of power, but every form of power carried the same obligation to treat people with dignity. He reminded the audience that mistakes should never be ignored, yet genuine remorse should never be dismissed without consideration. His words carried no bitterness despite everything he had endured. When the discussion ended, Mercer slowly approached Preston. His shoulders no longer carried the confidence that once bordered on arrogance. He admitted, with tears in his eyes, that watching himself had forced him to confront the person he had become. He confessed that years of pride had blinded him to the damage he caused and that he could not erase what happened. He asked for nothing except the opportunity to apologize sincerely. Preston studied the exhausted man standing before him. He understood that consequences were necessary and that forgiveness did not eliminate accountability. Mercer had already lost his badge pending disciplinary proceedings and faced investigations that would shape the rest of his career. None of that could be undone. Yet Preston also believed people could choose different paths after facing painful truth. He accepted the apology without pretending the harm had never occurred. He encouraged Mercer to spend whatever future remained rebuilding trust instead of defending old mistakes. Whether he ever returned to policing or found another profession, Preston hoped he would dedicate himself to serving others with humility rather than pride. Mercer quietly nodded, understanding that forgiveness was not a reward but an invitation to become someone better. Months passed. Mercer eventually left law enforcement and accepted a position mentoring teenagers at a nonprofit organization focused on conflict resolution and personal responsibility. During workshops he openly discussed the consequences of arrogance, bias, and refusing to listen. He never hid from his past because he believed honesty might prevent someone else from repeating it. Claire watched her father gradually become kinder, more patient, and more willing to admit when he was wrong. Their relationship slowly healed. Preston continued inspiring future lawyers, judges, and public servants. Whenever students asked how he had remained calm during the traffic stop that millions had seen, he explained that anger might win an argument, but character won a lifetime of respect. He reminded them that every difficult moment offered a choice between escalating conflict and protecting dignity. The neighborhood where everything began eventually installed a small community garden created jointly by residents and local officers working side by side. What had once become famous for division slowly transformed into a symbol of cooperation. Children who played their knew little about the viral videos, but they grew up watching adults from different backgrounds planting flowers together, sharing conversations, and proving that trust could bloom again even after painful mistakes. Before this story ends, take a moment to leave a meaningful comment telling us what touched you most. Do you believe true strength comes from holding power, or from showing humility when you have it? Your thoughts may encourage someone else who needs hope today. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Remember that titles, uniforms, wealth, and status never define a person's true character. Respect offered freely is always stronger than respect demanded by fear, and the greatest victories are often won not by those who shout the loudest but by those who choose integrity when every reason to become bitter stands before them. Even on the hardest days, kindness remains a quiet force capable of changing hearts, restoring broken lives, and reminding us that justice is at its strongest when it walks hand in hand with compassion.